everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. I am joined alongside my co-host, London Beth, and today we are hitting on the Chicago Bulls and what needs to happen for them to make the playoffs. Just to start off, the Bulls are currently on a 2-game winning streak after getting off a 5-game losing streak and are sitting in the 10 spot, which is technically a part of the new playoff format for the NBA. Technically, it's a play-in game, so they're in the playoffs. London and I don't agree with it, but that's beside the point. We don't work for the NBA, nor does the NBA care what we have to say. But it would be much better if the Bulls were sitting in spot 7 or 8, which is still a slight possibility, as they would for sure get into at least a 7-game series with whoever they play. So, just kind of starting with hitting off on things. London, where are your thoughts with the Bulls right now, sitting in the 10th spot? How are they going to do? And, we'll get into scenarios later, what they have to do in order to get up to 8. But right now, sitting at 10, do the Bulls deserve to be higher? Do they deserve to be where they're at? What do you think?
I mean, they, of course, deserve to be where they're at, Nick. When you lose games to the Timberwolves, the Magic, the beat-up Grizzlies the past, 5 games, we deserve to be where we're at. I think the thing that upsets me more about just the standing of where we're at is we're teetering with the Toronto Raptors and the Washington DC Wizards, and we're just sitting there like the Washington Wizards, the Toronto Raptors, and us. We're just all sitting there vying for that 10th spot. Clawing maybe is a better word for that 10th spot, which is quite aggravating as a fan, especially because I think roster top to bottom, we have a better roster than both those teams.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, we're gonna kind of get into this later about the whole trade deadline and what happened to the team as a whole after the trade deadline, because on paper, the Bulls look a lot better than they did on their opening day roster. And, at the beginning of the season, the Bulls were kind of going what they're going through now. They were losing close games. They were losing games that they should have won. We did the math. At one point, the Bulls could have been 22-10. 22-10 if they would have won out of their, I believe at the time they had about 20 losses. If they would have had half of those, they would have been 22-10. So the Bulls were doing fine at the beginning of the season, and they were gelling together. And what does the front office do? What does Billy Donovan go do? Boom. He gets rid of half the guys that are just starting to get to know each other. And a lot of them were young guys. I mean, Daniel Gafford was a huge loss in what was going on. He's ripping it up in Washington right now. The Bulls seem to have this thing where we give up really good players to Washington, though we did get good players out of it too. We got a bunch of young talent from Washington, and we freed up a lot of cap. But, this team right now is in re-gel mode, and they did it in the middle of the season. So you can't get the early, it's not even the early season kinks out. It's literally mid-season. You have to make a choice as a team. Sure, they kept Zach LaVine, Larry Marketing, Thaddeus Young, Kobe White. They kept Patrick Williams. They had the main area of the team that was the focus. But then you get Vuk, who's a starter. You get a bunch of new bench guys who have a lot of different personalities coming in. I think that I don't think they deserve to be in this position. I think that it was unfair from the front office to make these moves. Even though it's to benefit the future, I think that the Bulls are getting criticized too much for what is happening to them because, again, I've said it probably 3 times now, mid-season chemistry change. Not good. It's not good for the team because guys have to get used to each other. And over the last 2 games, the Bulls have looked really good. They beat the Celtics. Which was awesome. That's a
surging Celtics team.
Yeah, that is a team that gives you a boost in confidence, and that is where the Bulls, stand right now. So let me break it down for you really fast, London. We're in the 10 spot, which is technically in the playoffs. The play-in, we don't agree with that. We would love to hear your thoughts if you agree with the play-in or not. I mean, obviously it opens up more of a playing field, but it just feels like every team will make the playoffs now. So, and there's benefits to being the 10 spot. I will say we'll talk about that in a little bit, being the 10 spot with having a bad record in regards to the draft lottery, but we'll get in that. So they're the 10 spot, but they only get one for sure game to play in to make the playoffs. We are 2 games back of the Pacers that are in the 9 spot. That's not going to do us any good, which by the way, the Pacers have completely fallen apart. Injuries, it seems like their chemistry is off. The Pacers, when London and I talked about them early in the season, they were in 3rd place. I mean, they were one of the better teams in the East. Suddenly they're in the 9 spot. Who knows what happened? fully knows what happened. We can get into that in a little bit. But the Bulls don't play them anymore, which that hurts in regards to getting up games, because when we're 2 games back, if we were to play 2 games and the Pacers win both those games, we automatically lead, depending on the season record as a whole. So, or we're tied with them for that spot. So then, going back, the Bulls are 4 games out of the final full playoff roster spot, the 8th spot, to the Charlotte Hornets, who the Bulls play 2 more times this year. Bulls get 2 wins against them. That cuts the lead in half. It's only 2 games back. The Hornets are pretty inconsistent too, though they're a lot better than years past. I think the Hornets will make the playoffs this year. That's kind of where they are. So their best shot is to get the 8th spot, but if you can't get that, the play-in is the play-in. You get it. The benefit of the play-in is that you still have a bad enough record that you could be considered for the draft lottery. But with the Bulls draft lottery, Ruck, it's not going to matter. So, London, what are you kind of feeling like? What is the best case scenario for the Bulls right now, in your opinion? Do you think they can make the 8th spot, or are they probably going to stay in the play-in spot?
What I think is going to happen is exactly what we predicted in our last Bulls one. I mean, the last 10 games, they're 5-5. You know what I mean? So clearly what we said in the last 18 games, they're going to win half of them. That's kind of what we're already seen, is they're going to pretty much go 500 and stick to exactly where they are. The problem is the Toronto Raptors and the Wizards are somewhat kind of surging. They've only lost, right. The Wizards in the last 10 games are 7-3. The Raptors are 6-4. The Hornets are dropping down at 4-6, and the Pacers are exactly 5-5. I think we can overtake the Pacers, who are sitting at the 9th seed right now. I really do think so. I don't think we'll make it up to the 7th seed, which is the Miami Heat, but I think we can overtake the Pacers because, yes, they are slipping. The one thing that scares me about the Charlotte Hornets, and again, this is just solely based on, the importance of positions in the NBA, is LaMelo Ball is projected in the next couple days to come back off that injury. How is he going to play off that injury? I don't exactly know, but his presence on the court, he probably was the front runner before he got injured. And if he has 18 more games, he'll probably still win Rookie of the Year, just based off name and his ability and stuff. So if he comes back and even is half the player he was before he got injured, when the Hornets were the top 4 to 5 teams in the East, that is extremely scary. Okay, it's going to be very horrible for the Bulls, especially since we play them twice. Flip side of that, if he doesn't come back and they continue to slip from where they were a 3rd or 4th seed all the way now down to the 8th seed, that'll be a benefit. But again, I still see them finishing out 500, possibly just based on the average point differential. We're one of the worst for the top 10 teams in the East. If we hold the Wizards off, if we hold the Raptors off, I still think we sit in that 9 or 10 seed with, and I haven't really seen anything yet from them, even off these 2 wins, that would change my mind that they're going to all of a sudden just go on a surge and not just finish off 500.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And, looking at the roster in front of us, the Bulls are in a pickle right now. I mean, they only play, out of the 2 teams that are in front of them, they only play the Heat, who are in 7, who the Bulls I don't see have they play them back-to-back in Miami, which is a hard place to play, especially now that they allow fans in. The Bulls are one of, I think, 2 NBA teams now that don't have fans, so they don't have that fan advantage, which stinks. But they don't play. They play Charlotte. They play Miami, but they don't play Indiana. They don't play. I don't think they play Cleveland. They play Cleveland tonight, and that's it. Which is an advantage game to get a couple wins. But they don't, and they play some tough teams. They play the 76ers. They play Brooklyn twice. They play Boston again. They play New York. New York is a decent team now. I mean, Julius Randle, Derrick Rose, RJ Barrett, like they're not a bad team. Sure, they play the Pistons. All right, fine, whatever. It's the Pistons. But the Bulls have also lost to the Pistons this year. The Bulls are very inconsistent against all these different teams. And they play they play Milwaukee twice also. So they have a very tough schedule, for the rest of the season. And sure, they beat Boston. And I saw Bulls Twitter going like, oh my God, if we can beat Boston, we still have a shot. Like, okay, it's 1 game. If they can do that if they can beat if they can play the Heat on the 26th, the Knicks on the 28th, and the Bucks on the 30th, and win 2 out of those 3 games, then I would feel more confident with this Bulls team. But they also definitely need to beat Charlotte both those times. I don't even know if I want the Bulls to get that. I'd rather at this point have them play the play-in because they have the worst record. It helps with our draft picks. The Bulls are in just such an interesting position right now. And, Zach LaVine is still he isn't what he is because he's hurt. Larry Marketing hurt. Who else Kobe White always hurt, always giving the ball up. Vuk is the only consistent player besides Thaddeus Young as well on the Bulls. And, some of these tough teams, you need consistent play. If Zach was 100% healthy, completely different topic. I think the Bulls would have definitely beaten Memphis if Zach was healthy. Orlando, when Zach's dropped 30, that was a joke. Should have won that game. But the inconsistencies of this Bulls team, I don't think that they will make it to the 8th spot. I'm kind of with you. They can, but just do the play-in. If you don't make the play-in, then it's just another toss season, especially with how much we gave up in draft assets. It's just a toss season. So with that, it's just it's just, what do you do? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on would you rather have the Bulls do the play-in or get that for sure spot where they get into the 8th spot, the for sure 8th spot where they have a series to play. So, London, we kind of started to hit on it. What do the Bulls need to do? And that's the whole kind of our whole topic. What do they need to do as a team? Call out players, call out Billy Donovan. What do they need to do as a team in order to stay alive in this playoff race?
They got to stop turning the ball over. And that's that's point blank, done, conversation over. They need to stop turning the ball over, and especially against bad teams, the Timberwolves, the Magic, the turnover differential in those games was the opponents. I think against the Timberwolves turned it over 6 times, and the Bulls turned it over like 13 or 14 times. You cannot win against bad teams if you're giving them 6 to 8 extra possessions, which equals, even on 2 points or 3 points, or probably even more, 8, 16, that's like 16 extra points. You're not gonna win games, period. So that's the biggest problem. I agree that we do need to stay healthy. I think not having Zach LaVine fully healthy, Lauri Markkanen's never healthy, Kobe White turns the ball over, is never healthy. Vuk has been honestly the quote unquote great gray wolf of Chicago, and has been a staple. And we're winning games, but we're only winning games because he is absolutely dominating. He's averaging 20 plus points a game, a double-double, almost triple doubles, and he's doing exactly what he was doing in Orlando, just in a bigger market. That scares me. That's something I'm actually not happy about, is that we're now leaning on him so heavily because we can't stay healthy, or we can't not turn the ball over, or we don't have a consistent point guard. And we're doing exactly what was happening in Orlando with him, where they just fed, rebound, put back. And just the entire offense went through Vuk, and there wasn't anybody else. That's like, we got lucky against Boston. Mm-hmm. We lost terrible games. And if we don't have other people, this is going to turn into the exact thing that was going on in Chicago before Vuk got here, where it was shut down Zach LaVine and you'll beat the Bulls by 20.
Right.
And it's just a different player.
One-man show. It cannot be. It's not Jordan. You can't be Jordan. And Jordan didn't even have a one-man show. He had Scotty, he had Rodman, he had Grant, he had all these other guys to help him out. In the NBA, you cannot win a title. You cannot make the playoffs as one player. I mean, LeBron, and people will go, oh, LeBron did it. No, he didn't. In Cleveland, he had some pretty stacked teams. I mean, you remember the Mo Williams team, the young J.R. Smith teams, Kyrie Irving. Everyone has always had their Robin to their Batman. That's just how it is. And I totally agree with you, is that you focus on one guy. In theory, if you're focusing on one guy, everyone else should be open. Why are we not hitting those open shots? Kobe White, everyone's like, oh, over the last 10 games, he's got 18 points, 6 assists. Okay, now go look at his turnover total. Go look at his field goal percentage. They're not sexy, not one bit. I 100% agree with you, and that makes me nervous for Vuk, because what if after next season We still have him technically for 2 more years. And he says, I'm pissed off now. And we're finally getting some momentum. You can't piss off these big names that come to Chicago. And it turns off other free agents. The Bulls have a very small window right now before we go into another 5-year rebuild. And this rebuild isn't even working right now. So the Bulls could go from, being in the playoffs 8 out of 9 years through the late 2000s into the mid to late 2010s. And, then all of a sudden we go a decade without a playoff appearance. We didn't even do that after Jordan left. We had the baby bowls, 5 years after, but that worked. And then we were able to build off that. I don't see how the Bulls can build off this right now. And that worries me.
Yeah, and I know you talked a little bit before we go on to our next topic, just around like where they stand, if they make the push, if they don't, for draft purposes, because we don't have future drafts because we got Vuk. It kind of, again, and the mediocrity in Chicago is like, oh, do we barely sneak it into the playoffs, but then hurt our draft stock? Which, would be such a resemblance to what the Bears did last year. 100%. Or do we lose a little bit, get a little better draft stock, but then, the front office can't say we made it to the playoffs. It's so aggravating, because either way, we're not going to get like a top 3 player, and either way, we're not going to get a good seed in the playoffs. So either way, we're just sitting there like, ugh, darn it.
So it's no more turnovers, staying healthy, and actually making the basket. Everything that goes on within basketball, the Bulls should be doing, and they're not right now. So it's a very basic concept. It's a very boring concept, but it's what the Bulls need to do. I'm not saying that the Bulls don't have a talented roster. I think that they have a roster very similar to that 2008 team that went against the Celtics in 7, one of the greatest playoff series ever. Joakim Noah dunking over Paul Pierce, Ben Gordon dropping, oh, hi, Angel, dropping 40 points against the Celtics like it was nothing. The Bulls have a team like that, and it's exciting because you can build off that and then take a group of guys, go out and get another superstar, and then you have a 3-headed monster that you get a bench out of free agent. That's what the Bulls could easily do again. And hopefully they have their star in LaVine or Vuk stay healthy the whole time and finally win that championship, and LeBron James retiring. That's what needs to happen with the Bulls. But, kind of going into that conversation off of what they need to do this year, are you worried about the Bulls for the next couple seasons to come? I know we just started to hit into that, but let's move into that topic. London, are you worried about how the Bulls are built top to bottom, not roster-wise? Are you worried about their future?
Am I worried about their future? Yeah, I know Angel made a little guest appearance again. She always loves to talk Bulls or be here for the Bulls talk. When it comes to like the word, like, am I worried about the Bulls? Yes, every single season, in the off season and carrying on through, I'm always worried about what are the Chicago Bulls going to do. Okay, I'm always worried about who we're going to get. For some odd reason, we're the 3rd largest market, and we can't get big name players unless we trade for them. So yes, I am always worried. But for once, I'd say since, prime Derrick Rose and that whole team and stuff, I'm not as worried. I'd say it's more of a 60-40 split instead of a 90-10 split. And the reason why is because we have a consistent, good, proven winning coach. Our front office seems like they're actually willing to go out and put pieces around players like Zach LaVine and dump. And the biggest thing is they're willing to dump things that just didn't work out. Otto Porter didn't work out. Wendell Carter Jr. didn't work out. Like, those players that we drafted and brought around, they just didn't work. And they just are not going to be dominant players in a huge market team like Chicago. It's time for them to move on. That is really that is one of the things I think I'm so excited about for the Bulls next season. It's like, hey, we drafted this guy. He didn't work. Okay, fine. See you later. Like, we're not like holding on to these guys and like hoping that someday they pan out, because that's what we've been doing for the last couple years. And honestly, it was aggravating to constantly see Wendell Carter trot himself out there and then constantly see him not be good. I know we talk about, different positions. So yes, Zach LaVine centerpiece, Vuk centerpiece. I do think that if we can bring in a point guard, that'd be really, really awesome for next season. Patrick Williams is only 19 years old, and honestly, I am head over heels in love with him as a player. Just I know he's not like scoring 30 points a game or anything, but just how he's playing as a 19-year-old kid in the NBA, can't even go to a bar and drink. You know what I mean? Is phenomenal.
When the guys are going to the clubs, he's going home to
Yeah, he's
swipe
going home.
right on
He's
Tinder.
probably still going to the clubs. Whatever. We won't like call him out. He probably still is. But just having that veteran leadership, we brought in some depth with Tony Brown Jr., who's also a pretty young player with maybe a little bit of potential to play that kind of like sixth, that the kind of 6-man role, defensive, all that kind of stuff, so on and so forth. For the first time, yes, I am excited. Okay, barring if a draft kind of goes well and we can bring in a decently good point guard through free agency or something like that, I am excited. And honestly, even if we trot out this same roster next season, I'm actually a little excited to see what they can do in the offseason, see the chemistry that can be built. Like I said, I do think we need a better point guard. I think that's the main staple, and then I will really get excited. But top to bottom, front office, coaching, roster in general, like I said, I'm 60-40. You know what I mean? I'm not like 90-10 where I'm like freaking out and like having panic attacks because, Otto Porter Jr. is taking up 90% of our cap and he can't even be on the floor for more than 10 minutes, spraying Kirkland champagne everywhere, even though he's making millions.
Sheesh. Well, I kind of going off your point, like, I am not worried. Worried would not be a word. I am actually more confident for next year too, even if they put out the same exact roster on the floor. Why? To my point, at the very beginning of the podcast, is the fact that this was a mid-season chemistry switch for the Bulls. They were starting to work. They were starting to work before this trade, but they didn't have that other superstar presence that was needed to help complement LaVine. And they didn't. Now they have more veterans on the bench than they did before. I really like this Bulls roster. I think it's better top to bottom, cap wise, coach wise, athletic ability. Overall, the Bulls are in a much, much better position than they were last year. I mean, look at the deep bench that we have now. It kind of reminds me of the bench mob all over again. Do we have like that 3-point shooter like Kyle Korver that comes off the floor? No. You go out and get that in the offseason, though, for cheap. Everyone can shoot a half-court three now in the NBA. It's crazy. I mean, look at Steph Curry. But I'm not saying you can go out and buy a Steph Curry for $2 million this offseason, but I'm saying you can go get a guy that is strictly what he does. No flashy passes, no defense, anything. Kyle Korver wasn't really a defender. He was literally a 3-point specialist out on the floor, and he did what he had to do for the Bulls. Bulls need to go out and do that again. You also have an attracted coach. You said it, London, has an established winning record, has done well in each level that he has coached in. Excited about that, and develops young players. So young talent that's ending their rookie contracts that don't want to re-sign with their current teams. Let's go to Chicago and let's talk to Billy Donovan, because I'm old enough to understand the NBA, but I still have things I need to work on, and this guy helps unlock that. Finally, you have an attractive market, the number 3 market, like you said, in Chicago. And it's kind of figuring out, why is this not working? Why are we not bringing in players into Chicago? It's because of what happened after Derrick Rose. Just super toxic mentality, just letting him go. I mean, now it took him 5 years to get back to where he was, but he's doing pretty well. He did very well in Detroit. He's doing very well over in New York again. Derrick Rose, I think the Bulls should have never gotten rid of, no matter what. I mean, for what he did for the franchise, I don't care if he sat out for 8 years. You can always adjust his cap. You can always adjust whatever. He's a pretty understanding guy, but his story is just remarkable. And the fact that we also don't want to bring him back sucks. And I think that's kind of another thing that players look at is like, D Rose is doing so much better now. He belongs in Chicago. When you think of Derrick Rose, you will forever think about Chicago Bulls Derrick Rose. You're not going to think of New York Derrick Rose. You're not going to think about Cleveland Derrick Rose. You're not going to think about Detroit Derrick Rose. You're not going to think about Minnesota Derrick Rose. You are going to think of Chicago Bulls, primetime MVP, 3-pointer over LeBron James, Derrick Rose. And we had a huge roster overload this season. Those guys have all played with other teams across the league who have had stars across the league. And guess what? Hey, man, people usually don't lose their phone numbers that easy, right? Unless there's some beef. Come play in Chicago this year. It's very possible. I think that the Bulls could be very exciting next year. And, make the one game in. I think the Bulls could potentially do it if they go out and play. It wouldn't be the number 1 seed. It would be like 9 and 10 going at it, right, London?
Yeah. Yep.
So at 9 and 10, you go out and take on the Pacers. The Bulls have had some pretty fun games against the Pacers this year, if that's the case, if the playoffs started today. So there's a lot for the Bulls to consider right now. I don't think the panic mode button is what everyone's should be hitting right now. But were we expecting the playoffs this year? No. We got Vuk. You just got to take that deep breath and go, okay, we need to work this out. It's not just going to, it works. So totally in alignment with you. London and I are not worried about the Bulls. You shouldn't be either. But with that, we're closing this episode. Bulls take on the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight at Cleveland. So stay tuned for that. If the Bulls can get on a 3-game winning streak, that's a lot of momentum, and that's what the Bulls need. Angel is predicting a Bulls win. London's predicting a Bulls win. I'm predicting a Bulls win. But let's get it done. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside London Beth and special guest Angel, the office dog, and we will see you guys next time.